I used to work the night shift at a small-town library in New Hampshire. Quiet job, good pay, no stress. Or so I thought. I started about 6 years ago, fresh out of college. My degree was in English literature, and like most people with that kind of diploma, I had no clue what to do next. So when the local library posted an opening for a night assistant, I took it. I figured it would be peaceful. Maybe I could read, maybe even write a little. The library was old. Like really old, built in the late 1800s, stone exterior, grand clock above the front doors that hadn't worked since the 70s. It had 2 floors, tall oak shelves, and that kind of smell only ancient libraries have: dust, paper, and the faintest hint of mold hiding in the corners. I loved it. Until I didn't. There was one aisle, row H, tucked near the back of the first floor, wedged between biographies and history. It was narrow and dim, with old books that hadn't been borrowed in decades. The lights above it always flickered, even after maintenance fixed them 3 times. I avoided row H when I could. Not because I believed in ghosts or anything, but something about that section gave me goosebumps. The air felt heavier there, like it remembered things. It all started one rainy Tuesday in October. I was doing my final sweep of the aisles. It was just past 11 p.m., and the last patron had left hours ago. I had my checklist in one hand, flashlight in the other, walking slowly through the shelves. All was normal, until I got near row H. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Too soft to make out. But it was definitely there. I paused and tilted my head. "Hello," I called out. No answer. Just the soft hum of the overhead lights. I stepped into row H. The whispering stopped. I stood still for a moment, flashlight scanning the spines of the books. Titles I didn't recognize. Strange old volumes with cracked leather covers and gold lettering rubbed away with age. Satisfied it was nothing, I turned to leave. That's when I heard it again. This time it was clearer. Closer. It was my name. Whispered. Slowly. Repeated like a chant. "Aaron. Aaron." I spun around, heart racing. No one there. I don't know how to explain it, but suddenly it felt like the entire aisle was closing in on me. My chest tightened. My legs felt heavy, like wading through thick mud. I tried to move, but something about the air, it pushed back. Thick. Alive. Then I saw it. A small book. Open. Lying on the floor between the shelves. It hadn't been there a second ago. I bent down and picked it up. It was a journal, old and worn, with yellowed pages and a broken spine. Inside were names. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. All written in the same shaky handwriting, filling every single page. My hands trembled as I flipped through it. I recognized some of the names. Town locals. 2 of them had died recently. 1 had gone missing last year. Then I got to the last page. There, scrawled in dark ink. Aaron Whitaker, October 13th. My name. That night's date. I dropped the journal like it burned me and ran. I didn't look back. Not until I reached the front doors. I locked up in record time and didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I called out sick. The day after that, I quit. I never told anyone the real reason. Just said I needed a change. But that journal haunted me. I thought about going back to prove I wasn't crazy. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd fallen asleep and dreamed the whole thing. But a part of me knew deep down, row H wasn't just another aisle. It was something wrong. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Jenna, one of the new night assistants. We were friendly. Grabbed coffee a few times. She asked if I'd ever experienced anything weird in the library. My stomach dropped. She said she'd been hearing whispers. Always from row H. She brushed it off as pipes or the old building creaking, until she found the journal. Same one. Same names. Only this time, the last entry was her name. She quit the next day. I started researching. The library was built in 1887. Originally, it was a private reading hall for a local author named Horace Eldridge. Creepy guy. Wrote horror stories, never published, and was obsessed with the power of names. Believed that writing someone's name down could trap their soul. He died under mysterious circumstances. Heart attack in his study. They found his body on top of a journal filled with names. The last one was his own. Guess where his study used to be? Right where row H is now. Years passed. I tried to forget. I moved to another town, got a job at a bookstore, found someone, fell in love. But some nights, I still hear it. That whisper. It started in dreams, soft and distant. Then last week, I heard it in the hallway. Clear. Deliberate. "Aaron." I froze. Turned around. No one there. That night, I woke up to a book lying open on my kitchen floor. My old name tag tucked inside. And scribbled on the last page, "There is no leaving the whispering section." I'm writing this now in case anyone finds it. If you're working at that library, if you hear whispers from row H, leave. Don't look. Don't listen. Don't touch the journal. Because once your name is written in it, it never leaves. And neither will you. It was a cold, gray Tuesday when she came in. Middle-aged woman, maybe in her 50s. Wore a long brown coat that looked a size too big. Her face was pale, drawn tight like she hadn't slept in weeks. I remember her eyes most, nervous, darting around like someone who expected to be followed. She didn't say a word. Just walked up to the front desk, placed the book down gently, like she was handling something fragile, and turned to leave. "Ma'am," I said, "you forgot your library card." She stopped but didn't turn around. Her voice was dry, quiet. "I don't have one anymore." Then she walked straight out the door, into the fog. Never saw her again. The book she returned was The Quiet Tenant. Thing is, we hadn't had a copy of The Quiet Tenant in our system for over 20 years. I know because I checked. It was one of several books lost in the basement fire of '03. A freak accident, they said. Electrical. The entire lower floor went up in smoke, mostly old, archived books in storage. But the real reason people still talk about it is because of him, Raymond Bell. Ray was our janitor. A quiet guy. Didn't talk much, but always had a smile. He was down there when the shelves collapsed. Never made it out. The fire department pulled his body out 2 days later. Said it looked like he was trying to claw his way toward the stairs. So imagine my shock, holding this book in my hands. A book that should have turned to ash 2 decades ago. It looked old, burned at the edges. The smell of smoke still clung to the pages. But it was definitely The Quiet Tenant. Black cover. Author, M.T. Hemley. Same edition we once had. I opened it and felt a chill crawl up my arms. There were notes scribbled in the margins. Different handwriting than the printed text. Some pages had single words. "He's watching. Stay above ground. Don't speak his name." One page, chapter 7, I think, had this sentence circled in red ink. "The quiet ones are the ones you hear last." Right below that, someone had written, "He's still down here." I shut the book. Hard. I didn't believe in ghosts or curses or any of that stuff. But this felt wrong. Still, curiosity has teeth. And mine were already sunk deep. I went down to the archives room that night, long after the library closed. The basement hadn't been used in years, not since the fire. It was mostly sealed off, but I still had a key. The old wooden door creaked open like it had been waiting. The smell hit me first. Damp, smoky, and thick, like time had settled in the air. I descended the stairs with a flashlight. The air grew colder with each step. My breath started to fog. When I reached the bottom, I swept the light around. Charred shelves. Half-burned papers. Melted plastic bins. Everything was still there, exactly as it was left after the fire. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe I thought I'd find proof that the book had been misplaced all these years. That the fire hadn't touched it after all. Something rational. But then I saw the window. The basement had one tiny, square window high on the far wall, just at ground level. Too small for anyone to fit through. There was a handprint on it. From the inside. Not dusty like an old stain, fresh, smeared. Like someone had pressed their palm against the glass just minutes before. I backed away fast. The flashlight flickered. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Creaking. Coming from deeper in the room. Not like shoes on concrete, bare feet. Slap. Shuffle. Slap. Shuffle. I killed the light and crouched behind a collapsed bookcase, heart hammering in my chest. The steps stopped. Silence stretched out long enough to make my ears ring. Then a voice. Hoarse. Ragged. I returned the book. It was right behind me. I ran. Didn't care what I knocked over. Didn't care how loud I was. I bolted up the stairs, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Then I pushed a cart in front of it for good measure. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I kept hearing that voice. I returned the book. The next day, I scanned The Quiet Tenant again. Still not in the system. It wouldn't register. Every time I tried to scan the barcode, the screen glitched, flickered with static, then flashed one single date. March 17th, 2003. The day of the fire. I went back into the book, trembling hands turning the pages. I hadn't noticed before, but tucked into the back was a map, hand-drawn. A rough sketch of the library's layout. And a red circle. Right over the basement stairs. Beneath it, someone had written, "Don't let him follow you home." That was the last time I touched the book. I wrapped it in plastic, locked it in the supply closet, and told my manager we needed to replace the locks. Told her some nonsense about system errors and possible mold damage. She didn't ask questions. But the nightmares started soon after. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, certain I'd heard someone whispering my name. One night, I came home to find my apartment door wide open. Nothing stolen, nothing touched. Except on my kitchen table, there it was. The quiet tenant, waiting for me. I didn't bring it there. I burned it that night, poured lighter fluid on it, and watched it turn to ash in my backyard. But the next morning, I found it again, in my mailbox. No label, no postage, just sitting there, like it never left. I tried everything, buried it, dropped it off at a river, drove 3 towns over, and left it on a stranger's porch. It always came back. I don't know what he is or what he wants, but I know this. That book is a key, or maybe a trap, and he was never just a janitor. I dug deeper into Raymond Bell. No family, no background before 1995. It was like he appeared out of nowhere, hired on a whim. The only photo we had of him? Burned. Only his eyes remained, staring. I think The Quiet Tenant was his book. Not in the sense of ownership. More like he's the tenant, and the book is his lease. One that renews every time someone reads it. Every time someone writes in it. Every time someone brings it home. Last week, I found a new note inside the back cover. You should never have opened the basement door. So here I am, writing this down as a warning. If someone gives you a book you've never seen before, burned edges, old cover, strange smell, don't open it. If it's The Quiet Tenant, you're already too late. Because once you've seen the map, once you've heard the footsteps, he knows you, and you've just become his next address. 3 years ago, I volunteered to reshelve books at my college library. It was quiet work, peaceful, and for a student who needed a break from roommates, loud dorms, and constant noise, it was perfect. My task was always the same: return books to the biography section. It sat in the back corner of the upper floor. No windows. The lights were dimmer than the rest of the library. The shelves there were old, made of dark wood that creaked when you touched them. It always smelled like paper and something slightly sour. From the very first time I stepped into that section, I felt like I wasn't alone. At first, I blamed it on the isolation. When you're surrounded by silence and dust, your brain invents company, right? But after a few weeks, the feeling got heavier. Like a pair of eyes were watching me between the shelves. I'd turn around fast, expecting to catch someone, but no one was ever there. That section had a presence. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I remember because the sky was gray, and it had started drizzling outside. The kind of weather that made everything feel slower, sleepier. I was putting away a stack of biographies, one on Churchill, one on Jackie Kennedy, a thick one about presidents. And as I turned the corner into the biography aisle, I saw him. A boy, maybe 9 or 10. He sat cross-legged on the floor, right beneath the KL shelf, reading a book about JFK. He was dressed strangely. A white button-down shirt, navy blue shorts, high socks and shiny black shoes. His hair was neatly combed to the side, like an old-school class photo. The weirdest part? His clothes looked like they were from another era, like the 1950s, maybe early 60s. He didn't seem surprised to see me. Just sat there, flipping a page, legs swinging slightly like he'd been reading all day. "Hey there," I said gently. "Are you lost?" He looked up at me with pale blue eyes and said, clear as day, "You're the first one who sees me." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He gave the faintest smile. Then he blinked out of existence. Gone. Just like that. No footsteps. No sound. Nothing but the JFK book lying open on the floor where he'd been sitting. I picked it up with shaking hands. The pages were slightly warm, like someone had been holding them. The checkout card inside the front cover said the book hadn't been borrowed since 1982. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about his voice. "You're the first one who sees me." I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep. Finals were creeping up, and I had a bad habit of skipping breakfast and surviving on caffeine. But things didn't stop there. The next day, when I returned to the biography section, there was a book already lying open in the middle of the aisle. I hadn't left it there. None of the other staff claimed it either. It was a biography on Robert F. Kennedy. There was something taped inside the back cover. An old, yellowed newspaper clipping. Local boy missing in library, April 3, 1961. My stomach twisted as I read it. 10-year-old William R. Hawthorne was last seen at the city library on Monday afternoon. Witnesses reported seeing the child reading alone in the upper-level biography section. When his parents arrived to pick him up, William was gone. A thorough search of the library turned up no sign of the boy. The case remains unsolved. There was a black and white photo printed under the headline. Same boy. Same face. Same clothes. I showed the clipping to my supervisor. She thought it was a prank. Said the books in that section hadn't been updated in years, and we sometimes got donations stuffed with random paper. She tossed it in the trash like it meant nothing. But I knew better. That night, I dug through old newspaper archives online. I found more. William Hawthorne. Last seen April 3, 1961, right around 3 p.m. Biography section. Never found. Rumors started afterward. Students claiming to see shadows near the KL shelf. One librarian in the 80s even wrote in her journal that she heard children's laughter when no one was there. The story faded over time, as stories do. But some people remembered. And apparently, he never left. Over the next few weeks, I'd see him again. Never for long. Always when I was alone. Once, I caught him staring at the wall with his back to me. When I blinked, he was facing me, but his mouth was moving. No sound. Just lips forming silent words. Another time, I found all the JFK biographies pulled halfway out from the shelves. Like little hands had been browsing. The worst was the whispering. Late one evening, I was shelving a stack of books and heard a voice, soft, close to my ear. He told me to wait here. I turned. No one. I couldn't sleep. I started having nightmares. In one, I was trapped between rows of books. Every time I turned a corner, the boy was there, closer. His eyes darkening. His face melting page by page. I stopped volunteering after that. Told them I was overwhelmed with classwork. They didn't question it, but I couldn't stay away entirely. Part of me felt like I owed him something. He just looked so sad, like he was still waiting for someone to find him. One afternoon, I went back to the biography section, just to leave a flower. Silly, I know, but I needed to do something. When I got there, the aisle was empty. Nothing strange. No open books. I placed a single white daisy on the floor by the KL shelf. And that's when I noticed it. A new clipping, taped to the wall just above the baseboard. I swear it hadn't been there before. I peeled it off and read. Body discovered behind wall in library renovation. Construction workers renovating the second floor of the campus library discovered skeletal remains sealed behind an old bookcase. Authorities believe the body may belong to William R. Hawthorne, a boy who went missing in 1961. Identification is pending. No date. No source. The ink was faded, like it had aged for decades. That same night, news broke across campus. A body had been found during renovations in the library's second floor. DNA confirmed it was William Hawthorne. They'd found him behind the wall, in a space no one knew existed, sealed off by drywall and an old cabinet. The working theory was that he'd climbed inside during a game of hide and seek, or got lost, and never made it out. The school held a quiet ceremony, placed a plaque in his memory. But I didn't go, because I kept thinking about what the boy said to me. You're the first one who sees me. He waited all those years. Alone. Reading the same books, wandering the same aisle. Watching people come and go. Until someone finally saw him. I haven't been back to that library since I graduated. But sometimes, when I visit other libraries, I peek toward the quiet corners. The back aisles. The sections no one visits anymore. And I wonder, how many other kids are still waiting to be found? We weren't supposed to stay open that night. A blizzard had rolled in out of nowhere, thick and fast, the way it sometimes does in the Midwest. I was working the late shift at the downtown library, just me and Sandra, the assistant librarian, who was more concerned about getting home to feed her cats than anything else. The snow piled high against the windows by 7 p.m. A white wall outside. No traffic, no sound. Just the occasional groan of wind pushing against the glass. I suggested we close up early, but our branch manager, bless her obsession with policy, insisted we stay open for stranded patrons. There were 3 people inside. By 8:15, there was only one. And that's when she came in. I noticed her immediately because she didn't walk in from the main entrance. She just appeared. Right there, standing in the lobby, facing the front desk. Tall, thin, wearing a long gray coat soaked to the hem, as if she'd walked through a river. Her hair was flat against her head, dark and stringy, clinging to her face like seaweed. But here's the thing, it hadn't rained. It had only snowed. And the snow had been dry, powdery stuff. There was no way she could be that drenched. She didn't say a word. Didn't even acknowledge us. Just walked slowly toward the fiction aisle. Sandra looked at me. Did she come in with someone? No idea, I said. The motion sensor above the door hadn't chimed. It should have dinged when anyone came in. I watched her for a while. She stood there in the center of the fiction section, facing the shelves. Not browsing. Not touching anything. Just standing. Like she was reading the spines without moving her head. Her arms hung limply at her sides, soaked sleeves dripping onto the carpet. After 20 minutes of watching her not move, I decided to check on her. I don't know what I expected. Maybe she needed help. Maybe she was in shock. I walked over slowly. "Ma'am," I said. No response. Closer now. 5 feet. 3 feet. "Do you need anything?" She turned, and I stopped breathing. She had no face. No eyes. No nose. No mouth. Just pale, smooth skin stretched across her head like wax over bone. Blank and featureless. But I could feel something looking at me. Something deep inside her. Something aware. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a step stool behind me. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked. She was gone. Vanished. No sound. No movement. Just gone. But the carpet where she stood? Soaked. And a trail of wet footprints led away, heading toward the emergency exit at the back of the building. I followed them, heart pounding in my chest. The emergency exit was closed. Still locked from the inside. Sandra met me halfway, pale as a sheet. "Did you see?" "I saw," I said. We stood in silence for a long minute, staring at the footprints that just stopped at the door. "I'm checking the cameras," she whispered. The security footage was clean. Too clean. Every aisle, every corner, every second of that night, visible. Clear. Except for one thing. She wasn't on it. Not once. We saw ourselves. We saw the desk. The aisles. The entrance. We even saw the moment I walked toward the fiction section and stumbled back. But there was no one there with me. Just me reacting to empty space. And yet, when we rewound and zoomed in on the floor, the footprints were visible. Appearing behind me, wet and fresh. Like something had been walking, unseen by the lens, but still real enough to leave a trail. We closed early that night. Said it was due to the weather. But really it was fear. We never told the manager the full story. Just said a strange person had come in, made us uncomfortable, and left before we could get a name. But both Sandra and I knew something wasn't right. Weird things started happening after that night. Small at first. Books would be moved in the fiction section. Always wet. Always from the same shelf. I found a copy of The Woman in Cabin 10 lying open one morning. Its pages soaked and curling, like it had been dropped in a bathtub. But the security system didn't show anyone in the building after hours. Sometimes we'd come in and find footprints again. Just a few. Always in the same area. Damp prints on the carpet, like someone had been standing there watching. And every time it snowed, something felt worse. Heavier. Closer. Sandra quit 2 months later. Said she couldn't take the library anymore. Too quiet, she said. Too many things watching. She didn't even wait out her 2 weeks. Just left one afternoon and never came back. I stayed. Mostly because I needed the money. But part of me needed to understand. Who was she? Where did she come from? And what did she want? I started digging. Old records. Newspaper archives. Local legends. And I found something. Back in 1967, there was a woman, Miriam Halloran. She lived 2 blocks from the library. Known for being odd. A recluse. People said she used to come into the library every Wednesday, rain or shine, and read romance novels in the fiction section for hours. One winter, she vanished. It was during a snowstorm, same as the one I worked through. Police found her coat and shoes near the library, but no body. She was declared dead a year later. The rumor was that she'd suffered a breakdown and walked out into the storm, never to return. But some believed differently, that she never left. One night, I stayed late again. Alone. I brought in a book I knew she'd have read back in the 60s, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and placed it on the shelf in the fiction aisle. Then I sat at the end of the row and waited. The lights buzzed softly above. The heater hummed. And then, just past 10 p.m., the temperature dropped. Fast. My breath fogged in the air. I turned toward the aisle. She was standing there. No sound. No steps. Just there. The same long coat. Soaked again, dripping onto the carpet. No face. But this time she lifted her hand, slowly, and touched the spine of the book. Then turned. I expected her to vanish. But she didn't. She walked, slow and deliberate, leaving wet prints with every step. I followed her, around the corner, down past the periodicals, and toward the back of the library, where there's no door, just a brick wall. She stopped, raised one hand, pressed it against the wall, then walked through it, just like smoke. Gone. I checked the wall the next morning, and found something new. A small, square cut in the bricks. Like a vent, just big enough to peer into. I pulled a flashlight from the desk, got close, and looked inside. It led into a sealed room, filled with shelves, old rotting books, all fiction. And sitting in the center, on a rusted chair, was a coat. Gray. Still wet. We never opened the wall. I didn't tell anyone. Some part of me knew she wanted to be found, but not freed. Maybe she was bound to those stories. Maybe she became one. Now, when it snows, I leave a book out for her. Something new. Something she might enjoy. And the next morning, it's always gone. But the wet footprints stay, leading back to the fiction section, waiting for someone else to follow them. You know how people say libraries are peaceful? They are, until you're the only one left inside after dark. I've worked the closing shift at our small-town library for years, and I always liked it, honestly. Quiet, predictable, the hum of fluorescent lights, the dusty smell of old pages. People came and went, mostly polite. You knew what to expect. That changed on a Monday. A cold one. April 13th. The kind of evening where everything feels a little off, but you can't say why. We were 5 minutes from closing when the front doors opened. The automatic sensors didn't chime. No breeze followed him in. No cold air. Just stillness. He looked like he'd walked out of another time. An old man, early 80s, maybe older, wearing a long black overcoat. Thin, trembling, and bone-white. His skin looked like parchment, and his eyes were deep and sunken, like they hadn't closed in years. He clutched a book to his chest like it was the only thing holding him together. Didn't say a word until he reached the desk. Then, with a voice like brittle paper, he whispered, "It's overdue." I looked at the book. The Devil's Bargain. A beat-up hardcover with a faded red cover and no barcode. It looked ancient. The title was pressed in worn gold letters that had nearly rubbed away. "I don't think this is in our system," I said, reaching for it. "Do you know when it was due?" He nodded slowly. April 13th, 1979. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. That's over 40 years ago. His face didn't move. 25. That was the deal. 25 years. Then he comes. Who comes? I asked, mostly out of politeness. He looked at me, eyes glassy. The one who gave it to me. I tried to scan the book anyway, curious. The moment the scanner touched it, every computer screen in the library glitched. The lights above flickered. Every monitor, mine included, flashed the same thing. April 13th, 1979. April 13th, 1979. April 13th, 1979. Over and over. I yanked the scanner away. The lights stabilized. The screens went back to normal. But I was shaking. The man smiled faintly. He's always on time. Then he turned. Walked toward the exit. No rush. I didn't stop him. I should have. But something told me not to get in the way. He stepped outside into the cold. A few moments later, I saw him collapse through the glass doors. I called 911. Paramedics showed up fast. One of them knelt beside the man, checked his pulse, looked confused. Then pale. They took him away on a stretcher, covered. Later, one of the EMTs came back in, looking rattled. He'd been dead for hours, he said. Probably since this morning. Rigor had already passed. But he walked in here, I argued. He spoke to me. He gave me the book. The EMT just looked at me like I was nuts. I didn't press it. I sat down and stared at the book. The Devil's Bargain. I'd never heard of it. It wasn't in our system, and I couldn't find it online. No record, no author, no publisher. Just yellowed pages and a cracked spine. Out of curiosity, or maybe stupidity, I opened it. The text inside wasn't typeset like normal. It was handwritten. Every page. Neat cursive. And there were names, lots of them, written in the margins like a ledger. Each name had a date next to it. Every 25 years. I flipped to the back cover. And there, scrawled in blood-red ink, were 3 words. Debt paid. Next. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head. His face. His voice. The book. The glitch. And the phrase, he comes after 25 years. I told myself it was all just a weird coincidence. That maybe the guy had mental issues. That the power glitch was a fluke. But I didn't believe myself. Because something else started happening. The next day, I came back to work and checked the desk. The book was gone. I asked the morning crew if they'd moved it. Nobody had seen it. Security footage? Useless. Just like before, the cameras glitched during the exact moment he handed it over. There was no footage of the man. Just me, staring at thin air, reaching out toward nothing, reacting to something invisible. It made my skin crawl. I kept dreaming of him after that. Of the book. In the dreams, I was sitting in the library alone, lights dim, the windows covered in frost. I'd hear footsteps, slow and heavy, coming down the aisle. And then that same voice behind me. It's overdue. I'd turn and see a new face. Someone else. Sometimes a woman. Sometimes a kid. Sometimes a man with empty eyes. Every one of them holding that book. 3 weeks passed. I tried to move on. I stopped staying late. I even considered quitting. Until one morning, a young woman walked in with a package. No return address. Just the library's name scribbled on top. She handed it to me and left. Inside was the book. The Devil's Bargain. And something else. A receipt. From April 13th, 1979. It had a signature, Harold Wexler. I checked our archives. He'd been a librarian here. Died in 1980. Heart failure, supposedly. Except, there was a handwritten note stapled to his employee file. I don't think anyone ever noticed it before. It said, "Don't touch the red book. Don't promise anything in the margins. If he offers you time, don't take it. He always collects." I did more digging. Found old mentions in obscure forums. Creepy message boards. A few vague urban legends. People from different states, different libraries, even different countries, all mentioning a red book. Always appearing out of nowhere. Always offered during a time of desperation. Illness, money trouble, grief. They say the book offers a deal. Time in exchange for something else. One woman claimed she was given 10 extra years with her dying daughter, but the moment the time ran out, her daughter was taken, and something else came back in her place. Another man said he received a second chance after a fatal car crash, only to vanish without a trace 25 years later. The stories all end the same. A name in the back of the book. The words, "Debt paid." Next. Now, here's the part one haven't told anyone. 2 nights before the old man came in, I found that same book on the returns cart. Didn't think much of it. Thought maybe it was a donation. I was stressed about bills. Rent overdue. My dad's hospital expenses piling up. I sat down with the book. Read a few pages. Even wrote something stupid in the back. If I had 25 years, I could fix everything. I forgot about it. Until he showed up. I think I started the clock. And I don't know how to stop it. Because last night, I checked the book again. My name is there now. Written in that same blood-red ink. Right beneath the old man's. The lights at the library flicker now when I walk in. Books fall off shelves behind me. The computer system glitches randomly, showing April 13th, 1979, even when I'm not near it. And sometimes late at night, I see someone standing at the front doors. Not trying to come in. Just waiting. The Devil's Bargain is back on the desk again. No one checked it out. It just appeared this morning. And this time, there's a sticky note on the cover. It says, "Your 25 years begin now." And beneath that, "Don't be late returning it.